You wouldn't have liked to become a mother in ancient Japan, because while you pushed, screamed, and covered the room in, you also had to fight against ghosts and demons. What was it like to give birth in Japan? In ancient times, getting pregnant was a miracle, but also a sentence. Apart from suffering pain, losing your life during labor was as usual as breathing, and there were also children. However, the Japanese found the culprits of such tragedies: ghosts. And in order to stop them, they came up with a wild ritual. These malignant beings haunted the places where life and death met, such as a battlefield, or, in this case, pregnant women. Their power increased as the birth date got closer, when the veil between the world of the living and the supernatural world became thinner. To protect the mother's and the baby's lives, especially if it was a boy, the Japanese turned to unbelievable tricks. However, that put their souls in danger. Most of the information about these practices comes from the higher classes during the Heian period, between 794 and 1185 CE. Therefore, it's easy to picture that for the lower classes, the suffering was even worse. If today, with all the technological advances, giving birth is considered one of the worst kinds of pain, imagine doing it surrounded by ghosts. For this reason, preparing the birth date in advance was crucial. Mothers couldn't give birth in their own houses because it was believed that what came out of their bodies was impure and polluting. So they looked for the house of a servant or a lower-ranking relative to do that. However, there was a key detail in the ritual which, if they didn't carry out, could cause a disaster. What was it like to give birth in ancient Japan? With the evil beings on the prowl, the Japanese chose the birth location carefully, as they believed there were lucky and unlucky areas, which changed according to the dates. A sorcerer would point to the safest place to protect the family. However, the real spectacle took place during the birth. A room was prepared, isolated and protected with magical talismans, where the mother would kneel or squat down. If the baby didn't cooperate, the pregnant woman would be hung by a rope so that gravity would help the baby come out, but that wasn't the worst thing. Amid the pregnant woman's screams of pain, her companions would light incense and pray to chase away the spirits, and that protection increased if you belonged to a powerful family. That was the case of Fujiwara no Michinaga, a clan chief who married his daughters to members of the imperial family and hired a group of Buddhist monks, sorcerers, and Mikos to protect his future grandson and emperor, while the noblemen sat down to watch the show. When the monks felt a spirit was close to the baby, they forced it to enter the Miko, who served as a prison and means of communication. So imagine the blasphemies they heard during that birth. However, the riskiest part was the pushing. If anything went wrong, the mother's head would be shaved, turning her into a monk and securing a better fate in her next life. Now, we know that losses aren't because of ghosts, but who are we to judge their history? Always demand to know more.